Welcome everyone. I think to honor our time of our community and our beautiful guest speakers and facilitators, we will start now as people trickle in. Welcome everyone. It's been a bit. This is kind of an odd week for us at the Retreat Center Collaboration, holding a community call at the end of the month. But I'm very grateful for Nuns and Nones. A great team is represented here to hold this space with us. They've been with the Retreat Center Collaboration since its formation and really has worked in tandem, in partnership, in collaboration with us. And if you're unfamiliar, I think they'll walk us through a bit of what they're doing, where they've been and where they're headed. And I don't want to take too much time, so I'm just going to hand it over to Brittany. And again, thank you everyone for being with us, and a special thank you to Nuns and Nones.
Great, thanks Justine and Ben, RCC, for having us. If the rest of the team could wave their hands, hello. So we've got Sarah, Adam, Diana, Katie, and myself, and Alan Webb might also drop in. So it's so nice to meet you and welcome. Well, I'm aware that usually these calls start with some kind of practice, and given, so we chose an opening practice, and it's rooted in a core value that has been alive in Nuns and Nones since the beginning, which is intergenerationality. So some of you may have been a part of John Paul Lederach's exercise in the 200-year present. Is this something any folks have heard of before? Oh, good. You're in for a treat. So go ahead and make yourselves comfortable, and I'm just going to walk us through a little exercise. And while I do that, Ben or Justine, if you could give me, Adam, and Sarah screen sharing capabilities. You can also just, I learned this if you click, well, anyway, you'll figure it out. You're very smart people. Okay, so go ahead and take a deep breath in, out. Go and get comfy. And I'm going to invite you, as you study your breathing, into the 200-year present. And the way we will begin this is, I want you to go back in your memory to when you were a very young child, and think of some of the laps you would have sat on, people who would have stroked your face, maybe messed up your hair a little bit, or sat down with you and your toys and entertained you, or let you entertain them. And as some of those people flash through your memory, I want you to think of the oldest person that would have known you at your youngest age. So who are the oldest hands who held you as a child? And as you bring them into your awareness, I want you to think more or less about the year that they would have been born in. You can write it down if you want, or just keep it in your mind. When did they come into the world as a little one? And welcome to newcomers. We're just doing a little practice, and we just envisioned the oldest person who held us as babies and the year that they were born. And as we give thanks for that person and those hands, I want you to float yourself away from your childhood and toward today. to the kin that is here and now. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your extended family, your chosen family, your neighbors, your friends. And I want you to think of the face or the small hand of the youngest child that you know within your wider set of meaningful relationships. So as you think of that face, that young person, I want you to let time continue to flow us forward, to imagine that young person as an elder, a grandfather, or grandmother, or an elder auntie with crinkly skin and a long life behind them. And imagine the year or the decade that they might live to see at the end of their lives. When would that be? And that is our 200-year present. The 200-ish years that span from the birth date of the oldest hands who held us and the time of departure of the littlest ones we've held. John Paul Lederach calls this the 200-year present, and he also calls it an exercise in time and ethics. And as we enter into this conversation, we just invite you to keep that in front of you, and and let that presence bless our time together. May we have this conversation and move through the world feeling closer to those 7 generations that will come after us. May we feel close to that big picture of time and relationship. And may we bring choice into that awareness. Thank you and welcome. So we're going to talk about a lot about land and time and choice today, and share a little bit with you about our journey in thinking about land in these times. But before we do, I'm going to kick it over to my dear friend and teammate, Adam, just to tell you a little bit more about who we are.
Thank you, Brittany. Good to be with you all this day. So, nuns and nuns. You know, we keep saying we're going to change this name, but for now, still known as Nuns and Nones. And it does represent so much of what we come from and come out of, which was beginning in late 2016 and into 2017 gatherings between Catholic women religious and usually millennial age folks of any or no faith tradition, often activists or organizers, spiritual seekers. And as these conversations started to take place in different communities across the country, so many shared themes just surfaced. Deep inquiry around living in community, making lifelong commitments, how to sustain the work of showing up to the calls of the world over the long haul. And younger folks, myself included, found ourselves very inspired by the legacies of women religious and how much institution, how much organization and work in the world they had done while holding a kind of contemplative spirituality underpinning all of that. We also got to be in some candid conversations reckoning with the institutional church and its history and legacy of harm caused, and to be really deep in those conversations with sisters. And so these conversation groups led to more shared study, more shared action, some folks living alongside each other, nuns and the NONES, none of the above, spiritual but not religious. And more we found ourselves not just bridging generations, but creating bridges between people in religious life and organizers, folks in movement, and people really involved in some of the ecological and kind of racial justice movements of our time. So one of the things that we did not expect necessarily coming out of all of that was the inspiration around community itself as an institution that sisters were so beautifully demonstrating. And some of the language you might come across on our website says, we offer spiritual and political formation and accompaniment to support people in making lifelong countercultural commitments to repair and renewal. And what that is really pointing to is a deepening awareness amongst us that part of what we're called to create is a structure of belonging for folks of all kinds of ages and different spiritual traditions, but to share some common commitments and supporting each other in making countercultural commitments for the long haul. And out of that community that's growing is this particular piece of work around land and land justice, which Brittany and Sarah will share more about in a moment. Language that you won't find on our website, because we're newly trying it on as a group of people, is from our different spiritual traditions, making some common orienting commitments. A commitment to remember, living in present awareness to the sacred, a commitment to repair, to bringing healing to the web of life, and a commitment to renewal, to ongoing transformation. And living all of those out through some shared pillars of contemplation, study, action, and celebration. Out of all of that, there's a pretty clear call that we're heeding, and I'll pass it over to Brittany to share a bit about that.
Thanks, Adam. So yeah, shared call. In endeavoring to embody those commitments that Adam spoke to, there's one thread that has been kind of continually and increasingly alive for us, and that's how do we enact repair on the land that we live on, and how do we show up to really heal the ways that we've become disconnected from our lands. And when I say lands, I mean the living world and waters in which we live. And how do we challenge the systems that have commodified it in the first place? So it's on a very kind of visceral and communal level that we are trying to figure out how to embody this ourselves. And at the same time, we've been in conversation with many sisters whose future of their properties is uncertain. And I'll get into a little bit as to why that is, but well, basically, as demographics of sisters change, many communities are looking to divest from their properties and are reaching for what the future of that could look like. And so there's this kind of intersection that Spirit keeps telling us is alive and compelling us to move toward. And so we are, and we're doing that actually by creating a whole sub-team that's really looking at how do we walk both as a community exploring this, but also how do we create a kind of separate moving ministry that walks with sisters in listening for how the futures of their lands can align with the values and the needs of the climate justice and the solidarity economy movement, the movements that are really grappling with not just the effects of the climate crisis, but the underlying systems of oppression that have brought us to the point that we're in. So the question that we are asking ourselves is, what if instead of an administrative burden, are you guys seeing this? Yeah.
Yes.
What if property planning could actually be seen and approached as a justice ministry, as a way of connecting in relationship and connecting by land, the needs and the dreams of regenerating land and having new stories on land led by the very people that have been, whose land has been stolen or denied, Black and Indigenous people. So that is, I think as Adam spoke so much of Nuns and Nones origin, we've always been kind of this bridging force. And it seems to be one of our spiritual gifts. And so our question is, how can we be the bridge between the climate justice movement and sisters who are discerning the future of their lands? So a question we're asking is, how do we support religious landholders to move their land toward the commons, out of private ownership, toward aims like reparations, land back, which is the movement of Indigenous land sovereignty and return, regeneration, and hospitality in a moment when the climate justice, Indigenous sovereignty, and social justice movements need access to land. And there's a few things that we've learned so far. One of the biggest ones is we do not want to underestimate the incredible stewardship that sisters are already taking on their land. Sisters have proactively led efforts, community gardens, native plant restoration, permaculture forests, removal of invasive species. Like the sisters' land ethics are beautifully listening to how to be good stewards of creation. And the challenge that we're listening for, though, is what would it look like to combine that kind of being compelled towards stewarding with the long-term stewardship beyond sisters being there, creating opportunities for regenerating on land of new generations of steward, particularly those who have been denied land for generations. So that's the dream. And there are small examples. I'll talk about one in a second, but we're also just really acknowledging that there are some challenges here. A lot of communities have limited capacity to take this on because they're holding so much and even more as a lot of communities transition out of different ministries. We're in a global pandemic. There's a lot that teams are holding. And also finances are another big barrier. And we are really listening for how, if that's the like if a land sale is needed to cover, for example, the rising healthcare costs of communities, what are the creative ways, the creative partnerships or structures that can actually, or funders, who are the creative funders that can make sure that communities have what they need and can create the most creative, most radical story of the future of the land possible. So we know that right now finances are a barrier, but we don't think they have to be. We don't think sisters need to be holding that as on their own if they want to do something like this with their land. And we're just aware of there is a moral influence that these communities hold that ripples out far beyond what decisions are made on their land. So this is, and I think retreat centers fall into this too. There's such an opportunity to tell a different story about what is sacred, about who or what God or gods we believe in to be, or what we believe to be true by the choices that we make about land stewardship and whether or not we decide to operate in that frame. And of course, the time is limited in which we are working. And so we're aware of that as well. So I'm going to give one very quick example. Here we have 5 members of the Shinnecock tribe with Sister Carrie. I'm forgetting her last name, but she's a Sister of St. Joseph in the Brentwood, New York community. And these are the Shinnecock kelp farmers. they are the Shinnecock land. The modern day Hamptons are located on Shinnecock land, and these tribal members met sisters in the midst of protesting the continued encroachment of sacred Shinnecock land. And also the water in the Hamptons is suffering from increased acidification and pollution that's actually being caused by billionaires' bad septic systems. And the Shinnecock are reclaiming their treaty rights to kelp farming and seaweed farming, which is it like filters like 10 times more carbon than trees. Don't quote me on that statistic, but it's a lot. And they're creating a regenerative ocean farm, working with the sisters whose retreat center, it's actually it's not the mother house, it's their retreat center, is located on that coastal part of the land. And so this is one example of a collaboration between landholders and an indigenous tribe that's trying to do a regenerative project and reclaim their own relationships to the land, which has been denied. And right now it's just a kind of temporal collaboration, but there's a vision for continued collaboration and perhaps a collaboration that lasts in perpetuity. So we will see. But that's an example of the kind of hope and excitement and just relationship, partnership, creativity that beyond just conserving land, we can create relationships and proactively regenerate the land if we open up some more possibilities to one another. So that's my little bit. And Sarah, let me know if you want me to keep sharing the screen, but Sarah's going to talk a little bit about how are we weaving together this communal impulse to change ourselves and how we're relating to land and our desire to be working with sisters. And we've been doing that through a corporate commitment.
Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, I'll take a break from the slides for a moment and just share a little bit of story of yeah, us sitting with these questions and with this body of learnings and relationships. And we were together this summer, really sitting with the question like, okay, knowing all this, what do we do? What do we do with this information? What do we do with this shared call? And we finally were able to come together as a team this summer after 18 months apart during the pandemic. And we were sitting in a circle in Erie, Pennsylvania, at the Benedictine Monastery, where Katie lives and where we were beautifully hosted by our friends there. And we had blocked out these 6 days to be together and really be in community, but also be with these questions and find what feel like the next steps to be walking together. And one of the first morning we were all together, we had the great privilege of speaking with Sister Joan Chittister, who's an Erie Benedictine and a fiery prophetess of truth and justice. And we got the privilege of really being grilled by her and in some beautiful ways, and also being offered some really concrete ideas that we've really been running with about how we can be moving with these questions and with this impulse. And that is the example of the corporate commitment. And so the corporate commitment is language used by the Erie Benedictines, and it was offered as an example of a way that sisters as a community decide on a common course of action for a period of time. So, I'm sure many of you are either sisters or familiar with sisters, but many communities of sisters have multiple ministries that are, channeling their energy and their focus. And a corporate commitment emerged as a way for sisters to have a kind of a common source or kind of touch point of focus for their work in the world, for how they're responding to the times. And for many years, nuclear disarmament was a focus, was a corporate commitment. And that has evolved with the times. And so we were talking with Sister Joan, and we're absolutely lit up by this idea, because we as a community are seeking to live out an ethos of land justice. And we see this really big need and opportunity and window by which we could do this work. And it really felt like an elegant simplification for bringing those two things together, to say yes to a commitment that we could then invite other sisters or other communities or other movement partners into. And so we are currently working on a corporate commitment around land justice, and would love to share it with you. And again, this is something that we're still working on, and are building a strategy around, and we really want to welcome RCC and our partners to be companions with us in this. And so this is an expression of our common call to repair and renewal as a community, and hopefully a guidepost for how we aim to change the way we relate to land and hold each other accountable to that tangible work of land reparation and regeneration. And so I'm going to share my screen quickly. There we are. And this is a draft of some language that we are feeling really animated by. So, grounded in a spirituality of interdependence, we actively seek to repair relationships damaged by colonial capitalist systems, starting with the land we live on and those from whom it has been stolen, denied, or compromised. And we commit to regenerative practices on the land we steward, own, or otherwise influence, to incorporate a lens of racial justice and reparations in decisions about those lands, and to heal and cultivate our own relationship with the living world. So this is a commitment that we are working with, and it also comes with some practices. We've identified 7 pathways or practices for how we can enact this. And again, drawing from the wisdom of how sisters use corporate commitments, there are many ways to live out this ethos and this commitment. And part, I think, of the wisdom and of this flexibility is allowing for a plurality of paths that we can learn about and learn through that kind of communal accompaniment around living these out. So this is what we're working with. And right now, we would love to just share with you the larger version of our corporate commitment. Also, as a side note, corporate commitment is language that sisters use. We'll probably be shifting the term we use, whether it's a common concern or something else, but just so that is clear. We're going to move into some time with this emerging body of work. And I'm going to stop my screen and pass it back to Brittany.
Okay, let's take a breath in. That was a lot of information, and we're gonna enter the part of our conversation. We're gonna enter the conversation part. First, a conversation between you and the rough draft of a commitment that we've made, which is located in your chat. And if you can access it there, that's best, but we'll screen share just the top commitment piece, not the practices. And we're going to take 10 minutes just to kind of, or let's take 8 minutes, just to read this and take time with it. And what we invite you to do is approach this in I don't know how many people have practiced Lectio Divina before, but also a deep practice of the Erie Benedictines, which we often are exposed to through our dear Katie, who lives with them. So Katie, you can maybe add to this, but the idea is just to really listen for what words are shimmering to you or calling you in some way, and pray on them. That might mean free writing about what is speaking to you. It might mean just listening attentively. But that's the invitation now. So I will screen share the core commitment again. And in the chat, you should be able to open up that land justice, ethic, and corporate commitment document. And we'll come back together at 11 after. All right, take a minute to wrap up your thoughts, and we'll come together in about 30 seconds. Okay, go ahead and wrap up your thoughts. And we'll begin to come back together. And we're about to go into breakout groups here, and we have a couple questions for you all to consider together. Oops, that's not the one. There we go. So in general, how's this resonating for you? What's resonating with you? What's coming up? And then question 2, we want to invite you to reflect specifically on our practice number 4, building local relationships. And to begin to share with one another, you know, this is also a community of practice. I know that's one of the main ways that people come to RCC for, is to kind of start problem solving together and dreaming together. And so we want to invite you to reflect with one another. What are the local partnerships that might already, or local relationships that might already exist, that could deepen? Who do you not know? Like maybe you don't even know who it might be, but you have an idea of maybe it's as simple as, we don't have a relationship with the local tribe here, and I don't even know where to start. Just in the spirit of our deep value of relationship, we wanted to invite a reflection on that theme. And then if you have time, if there are other practices either in that list or something that's not listed that feels really important to you, if you were to try to embody something like this. So those are the 3 questions. And we will take until 45 after the hour, whatever that is for you. And I think Ben or Justine will send us off.
As soon as you said breakout rooms out loud, people reshifted. So I'm just making sure that we have the right amount in each room here, so folks can have a conversation with someone from Nuns and Nones in their circle. And it's looking really good right now. Some of the conversations will be a little smaller, but that's great. So here we go. There you go. Welcome back.
We thought we had a little bit more time.
Did I make a mistake?
Yeah, we were gonna go till 45.
Oh,
but maybe, how are folks feeling? Maybe show me with your fingers how many more minutes you want in your breakout groups. I see 10, I see 5, I see 10, I see 10. All right.
15.
Ben, can you send us back in for another 10?
sure can. I
Or
apologize.
15.
Thank you.
15. 15.
Do I hear 15?
Let's stick. I'm seeing. Let's say 12. let's go till 40. That's 11 minutes, and then we'll keep going in dialogue in small groups. So
11
let's
minutes.
do that.
Sold.
Bam. See you later.
Do you want to?
Appreciate you.
No problem. Sorry, I timed it.
No worries. All good. We're just gonna open the floor and hear what is most live for folks. So the floor is open. We're just, gonna have a conversation for these last 18 minutes.
Well, Brittany, thank you for your presentation today and your invitation. What I find exciting about this is that it rides on a wave that I think retreat centers are looking for, and many retreat centers are looking for, in the sense that I think there is some movement with retreat centers that we are so programmed to death. And I think that COVID kind of blew that up. And now we're starting to get a little bit back into doing programming, yet we're also looking at how do the retreat centers, especially those that are connected with the sister congregations, that it really actualizes the charism of the sisters. And so those are no longer programs, but experiences. And that takes on a whole different, it's a whole different energy. And so I think this is good timing, providence, as we say here at Mother Bonavis. And so I applaud you. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to listen and to ride on that wave. I got to go for 1 minute. Hold on. Bye. Hey, Sister John Crystal.
Thanks, Margarita. It's good to see you. I don't know if she can hear me. Yeah. What other themes are coming up for folks?
I wanted to also say thank you, Brittany, to Nuns and Nuns and everyone who shared in my group. I wonder if I can put a call out for sharing information. I was sharing in my group that one of the things that's come up around the land, we have someone who used to be a program coordinator who's on the land. She's African Nova Scotian, and she's healing in exchange for offering her superpowers. And it looks like we are going to head into doing more residencies of different lengths. And I just wondered if any other retreat centers are experimenting with residencies in the way that monasteries and, have for centuries. I'd love to know if you are, be in touch with me or the retreat center. And maybe, I would just love to know more.
I wish Dr. Maya was still on the call, because I think she's doing some residency work. Or Myra,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, I'm still here.
Here
Yes.
you are.
Thank you for thinking and mentioning me. We have our intention is to have a residential healing center where I'm actually living in the space, being a steward of the land, and then having people come and stay for a weekend, for a week, for 28 days, and do in-depth healing work to resolve trauma. And then also healing from oppression, and then eventually to have space where people can live in a healing community. So it'll be a little bit more long-term, for maybe a couple months or even longer than that.
lest anyone think that no one watches the RCC recordings. That's where I learned that. So thanks for sharing again, Dr. Myra.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Brittany,
Justine.
I was grateful to be in this space, one, because it was intergenerational. So thanks to Nuns and Nones for inviting and encouraging that in. And also holding that we come into this conversation with different lenses and different perspectives and different access points. In our group, we talked about holding the micro to macro, the individual to community balance of changing what we can and contributing to systemic change, and how that can be a struggle or dance, or what language you want to put around that. And gave me something to chew on for a while. So thank you.
Any other groups that haven't gotten a chance to share?
Well, I'll share something that came up in our small group, was around sort of the importance of bringing in multiple stakeholders, and especially with retreat centers, as similar to sister communities, there are multiple administrators or levels of decision making and planning teams. And how do you get something like these values translated into practices across the board? And I just wanted to offer one video that I found very inspiring. And I think that this video will probably be in our upcoming Nuns and Nones newsletter, of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Brentwood, which is the example that Brittany gave. There's this incredible 20-minute video on their land ethic and how it translated just across the board in their community in all of these different ways, and just the ripple effect of decades of work of turning these words into action. So I just wanted to offer that for people who are interested. And we used the language of corporate commitment because that was what we learned from Erie Benedictines, but certainly these commitments exist across different communities in different language. And so this is another great example of what it can look like institutionally adapted into a local context.
And the video was made before the collaboration with the Shinnecock started. So as supplemental reading, I'm adding one of my favorite written pieces about that example in particular.
I'll share just a little bit from my small group. We talked a bit about to the point of stakeholders, just the reality that there are a number of communities in a really tough place internally as a community in facing these questions, and that it's one thing to really resonate with all of this really personally and be an employee, and to not necessarily have the political capital or the decision-making power, or be even invited to the table for some of these conversations, and the challenge of, the advocates and the folks within these communities sometimes also having kind of being on the edge of their own communities, having a limited amount of political capital as well. And so, like, what is the support that we can bring together or find together to enable a softening in that, and also address the very real realities of communities that have sisters that are just the last ones that are with a lot of responsibility that might not even be necessary or needed anymore, but is just like part of what has to happen on these properties. So we had a lot of like real talk that was sobering, but also felt really important in terms of like, in order to make this possible, we're going to really have to look at what's needed to enter this discussion from a very different place, and to be in that place in order to invite people to the table.
Thanks, Sarah. If this sparked real talk in your group, then I think we did our job. And I think that's really the question, is like, what are the conditions that can allow us to look at something like this and look toward possibility and real solutions that don't even exist yet? Like, what is needed in order for us to approach a commitment like this with that kind of disposition? And the barriers are real. And so I think real talk about them and how to ease their presence is really important. We have time for just a little bit more time, a couple more minutes for shares. And please feel free to speak from your group share back, or just a personal share of what is alive with you right now as we prepare to part.
Well, first I want to apologize for coming late. It's good to see so many familiar faces, but also to express the gratitude in the direction that you're going. I find these questions are so profound, not only within the Catholic world, but within many of the members of RCC, and they ripple out as well. Each retreat center represents many, many communities. Some of them are geographical, some of them are more thematic. So I'm hoping that this is kind of the first stone that goes into the pond, but it will ripple out not only to retreat centers, but to their partners, their constituents, which often are in urban environments, or in sometimes in places where we don't ask land questions. So thank you for that.
Love that. Thank you, Warren.
I just want to add my deep gratitude to nuns and the whole group present. Very inspiring, uplifting conversation that weaves us all together with the land as our grounded being in a very beautiful and profound way. Thank you for your vision and your work and that statement. And I hope we can do this again and more often. That's a hint to Ben and the RCC. Really
well, I will second that hint. Let's hang out and deepen into listening to what this commitment or something like it might offer in the way of collaboration and doing new things.
Yeah, wonderful.
So may it be so. All right, I'm going to take a breath and make a little bit of space for any little burning last shares.
I might just take a second here to weave just the theme that I'm hearing. I wasn't in a small group, but just from this, the tone of what's in the room right here, I really hear this as a step forward in the same land legacies conversation that we had back in May at our Flourishing Together retreat, and some of the conversations in between. I hear this as another foot on the ground, and it feels parallel. Like there are whole conversations happening outside of this group that have deep impact in the work that we're trying to do and the conversations that we're having. So, echoing the two voices that have just said, let's keep this in collaboration. We need to keep this connected. I just want to echo that we're not doing this alone, and that other people have insights that we need to keep connecting into. So I just really appreciate the way that the conversations are already so interwoven.
Yeah. The signs of a healthy network. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much.
So I'll just share very quickly. Oops, did I cut somebody off?
Yep.
Okay. Here's our link to our newsletter. And if you want to get some sporadic updates, we don't email you more than once a month. That's a place, but we'll also, it seems affirmed in the room today, we'll keep conspiring together in other ways as well. And I just wanted to flag two opportunities. We are encouraging our Nuns and Nones community at large to sign up for a course that's being offered on Tuesday afternoons, evenings, depending on your time zone, called Rekindle. It's being offered by Movement Generation, and it's going to have a lot to do with many real-time solutions to climate, racial, and economic justice, but many of them on land. So we'll be taking that. I'll send actually, if Sarah maybe could drop the registration link. If you put N and N in the community organization or the pod box, we'll link up with you, and we're going to just do a special little debrief with anyone who's joining us as part of that larger crew. And also, we've got a lot of new materials coming out this fall. There's some screenshots foreshadowing our imagination briefs, which will be kind of a deep dive into themes like land back, reparations, regenerative land use, and specific examples of how communities have or could use their land to further those goals. So that's what's coming up down the pipeline from Nuns and Nones. And we'd love to stay in conversation with you.
I wonder if there's a way that we could get a cohort of folks from RCC to be involved in that conversation and debrief together. That might be nice for us to jump in there and then jump back in with each other. So let's keep that in mind.
For the course?
For folks who decide they want to attend and then want to debrief afterwards as retreat centers.
Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. Power of small groups.
Yes, they're I'm looking for the link right now. It's not on their website, so I have to find it from our emails.
I have it.
I've got it.
Right.
Oh, you got it. Great.
Yeah.
They are really focusing on doing this learning in pods and in regional and land-based ways. And so just put your I can connect you with the organizers, and if you put RCC in the community, they will group you as a pod and let you know of who else is in your pod, and I can facilitate that introduction.
Excellent. So we have an edit. Check out the course, and if you want to participate, you can put RCC in the community box. And Sarah can do some air traffic control there. Looks like Justine has an announcement, and then we'll go to whatever calls us at the hour. Justine?
Oh, I have an announcement. I just put in the chat, if you cannot see it, that we hope everyone can join for our next community call September 14th, where we'll be sharing learnings from our first JEDI circle, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion circle. I'm really excited about that. And then Sarah, maybe you and I can connect about having an RCC cohort. And Ben, was there one more announcement about transition circles?
Yes, but I think that might be too much information all at once. For centers who are going through big transitions, and that includes most of us, we've put together a support circle led by Margarita and Jean. And the first one is the third day of September. So September 21st, I believe it is. So we'll have more information about that coming out soon with an invitation and a Zoom link and all of that. You might have seen a save the date in our last newsletter. So I just want to lift that up to your attention, that if you're looking for more kind of peer support regarding big organizational changes that you might be going through, we're putting that together. Margarita, do you want to say more to that now? Yeah, okay. There you go.
I think you said it perfectly. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much to everyone, and thank you to Nuns and Nuns. We are at the hour. I just want deep gratitude to everyone. Thank you so much, and this will not be the last conversation we have. Thank you all, and be well.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful people.
Bye.
Bye.
Woo, see ya.
Bye, Katie.
Hi. I know I wanted to stick around to say hi.
Are you in Erie?